Speaking of freedom, the religious freedom bill, apparently Michaelia Cash has begun negotiations with Labor. Are you of a mind to support that passage?
I haven't seen it
passage
yet,
of it?
Kieran. We haven't seen it yet. And so we want to see the bill. It goes to the government party room.
So no one in your team has seen it? Because the government's saying they're negotiating already.
Well, no one's rung me. My understanding is there have been some conversations between the Attorney General and the Shadow Attorney General, but the bill hasn't been tabled. There hasn't been an exposure draft. It has been pretty poor, frankly, Kieran, that an issue which was promised prior to the 2019 election, we're now in the pre-caretaker election period. According to the Prime Minister, he's called the election effectively. He's out there campaigning. He's given up governing. And as part of that, there's this legislation that he's had 3 years to introduce.
But is it important for you to be proactive in supporting communities of faith after what appeared to be a backlash in Western Sydney, particularly against Labor at the last election?
Kieran, if you know my background, I'll always support faith communities and I'll always engage, and you can protect religious freedom whilst not taking away the freedom of others should be the objective here. People should be able to practice their faith. I've always been very respectful of people of faith, and it's something that I was raised with, and it's something I always hold dear.
On the climate emissions reduction targets, Labor figures dismissed the Herald Sun report recently that it was going to be in the 40s. Are we going to see something around what the government's projections are?
What I'm not going to do, Kieran, is announce here on afternoon agenda where we're going here.
Do it.
Because I know you would want that.
A lot of your colleagues will be watching.
I know you would want that, but we'll have our proper processes, as you would expect.
So it goes to caucus.
As you'd expect, we'll have all of the proper processes is what we will have in place.
And during the sitting week,
we will have all of our processes in place. I've been very careful to say one of the things that we won't do is, pick out some magic figure or what have you. What we're doing is announcing policies. We'll see where that takes us, but we've said they'll all be consistent with net zero by 2050 that we announced years ago. So programs like rewiring the nation to fix electricity transmission in this country, projects like community batteries essentially for solar.
Do we get the targets though before Parliament wraps for the year?
Projects like you will get more and more policy. You already have, frankly, more policy from us. And the government don't really have a target. They've just got a vibe without any detail. And that was pretty inadequate, which is why they released their modelling late on a Friday night with no journalistic scrutiny.
Before you go, you took exception to something the Prime Minister said today in relation to his holiday to Hawaii. He then followed up your comments by saying that you've chosen to politicise the message he sent you, and you've done so ever since. What do you say in response to that?
What a nonsense. Here's what happened today, Kieran. The Prime Minister stood up in the Parliament and he said, to quote him directly, so word for word, he said that I texted him from the plane when I was going on that leave and told him where I was going, and he was fully aware of where I was travelling with my family. That's not true, Kieran. He did send me a text message. It was a private text message from him to me. It didn't say where he was going. I did not know where he was going. During that week, you'd be aware that the Prime Minister's office briefed out and said it was wrong that the Prime Minister was overseas, and they wouldn't even confirm that Michael McCormack was the acting Prime Minister during that period. Now, I kept because...
But did he tell you he was going on leave overseas?
No, he didn't. He told me...
And you didn't divulge that to anyone?
No, I didn't.
He was going on leave regardless?
No, I didn't, because, Kieran, if you sent me a private message, it stays private. And we know that this Prime Minister divulges text messages from world leaders. I have a view that if someone sends me a private text message, then it's private. But I couldn't allow it to stand that that was the case, because he did say he was going on leave. He didn't say he was going overseas. He didn't say where he was going. And frankly, that was a matter for him. But I did find it extraordinary that it wasn't divulged in a normal way that he was on leave. That's where this problem comes from. And today, after he did that, and I gave my personal explanation, the Prime Minister stood up and doubled down and said, oh no, I was talking about not where I was going, tried to pretend he was talking about something else. And then after the Speaker's tributes that were made, he stood up and again corrected the record in the Parliament. The problem for this Prime Minister is that he has this character trait whereby he says whatever is convenient at the time, regardless of what the facts are. And it is just extraordinary that he has been prepared to do that.
Mr Albanese, I appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Kieran.